Everything you ever wanted, question mark, to know about APBA Soccer. I was a beta tester of the APBA Soccer game in 2010 and early 2011 when John Cochrane, the current owner of the game company, wanted to come out with it. Somehow or another they figured that somebody who'd been playing APBA baseball since 1968 but who routinely shows up for conventions in soccer jerseys might be someone to beta test the soccer game. The couple things I will tell you about differences between the beta test version and now. The beta test version was more complex. And the simplification on it wasn't particularly something I had suggested, which makes me think that there was perhaps another beta tester or somebody else. The version you have now allows you to choose from among 3 formations for your players. One fairly standard, one more defensive, one more offensive. There were a lot more choices in the beta version that I looked at. I think cutting it down was a good idea because I think it was unnecessary complication you didn't really add to the game. There were 3 things, specific things, in the beta version that I told John Cochrane, if you don't change these, you're going to look like somebody doesn't necessarily know what they're doing when a real soccer person gets hold of it. God bless him, he changed them all. I was trying to dig out my old email and remember what all 3 of them were the other day. The one thing that I can remember is the fact that the beta version had a 50-50 roll after a foul to see if it was a direct kick or an indirect kick foul. Now that sounds to me like whoever designed that portion of the game originally was used to watching their kids' youth teams play, where you see a lot of indirect kick fouls called. In a professional game, you theoretically can have indirect kick fouls, but they're never called. In the entirety of the 2010 World Cup, and yeah, either live or on tape, I watched every kick of the ball in the 2010 World Cup, all 64 games, and I don't recall an indirect kick foul getting called once, with the exception of offside, which is always an indirect kick call. Indirect kick violation, and it is so in the current game. Darn if someone didn't try to make a liar out of me in Tottenham's opening game, which I watched last weekend, an indirect kick foul was called. Except that watching it on the replay, it's quite clear that it was an incorrect call. It should have been a direct kick. So there we go. The game engine, briefly. The important thing in the game, just to surely, I don't know how well these came through, but these are scans from the game boards. In the top right corner, what you see is a chart that across the top lists areas of the pitch. A is the penalty area. X is essentially you've got the ball in your defensive half. The rest of it you can imagine. Down the side are your non-goalkeeping players ranked 1 through 10 based on an index that each card has of how far forward that player normally gets while he's playing. Regardless of what his stated position is, how likely is he to come forward and participate in the attack? And when you get the ball in a given spot, a given part of the field, you roll the dice, use this table, and it determines, okay, if I've got the ball halfway from midfield to the goal I'm attacking, which is section D, which one of my players controls the ball, okay? And the whole point of the chart, if you could properly see it, is that the more attacking players are more likely to get the ball down in the penalty area, and the more defensive players are the ones more likely to be playing it out of the back, which makes perfect sense if you've ever watched a soccer game. From most restarts, goal kicks, throw-ins, kickoffs, what have you, for most dead ball restarts, where you get the ball really, the skill of your players really doesn't make a lot of difference. A goal kick, if the goalkeeper's kick, if the goalkeeper's taking a goal kick, that's one chart in the book, and it doesn't inflect based on what team you're playing. But once you've got the ball in open play, the skill of your players matters a lot. Okay? Which of your players get it is, again, depends on the tendency to get forward. What they do with it is very skill dependent. What they do with it is taken to a chart. That's the one I want. It's taken to a chart. The top line is the offensive formation you are playing that divides into 3 macro columns, which you pick one of those based on the offensive formation that the other team's playing. You then go to a column based on what part of the field you've got the ball in, Your result number comes off the red numbers from your 11 through 66 dice roll. Okay? Lower number, the better. Okay? The lower number, what you see lightly shaded upper left corner of each of those three tables, make out that that's an S. That means the player that you've got the ball from where he is, he's taken a shot. The next best ones are passes to his teammates that are completed. Then there are cases where the defense got in the way of a pass, and there are cases where it's a loose ball. The last four results on every case, 40, if you roll a 47, it's offside. 48, the player with the ball fouled his defender. Number 49, the player with the ball was the recipient, was the victim of a foul. Player number 50 goes to a very abbreviated rare play chart. Okay. Obviously, 47, 48, 49, all the results, other results are different for every player. Every player has exactly 150 on his card to go to the rare players on 65. All right? If you get a shot, one then goes to a rating on the player's card. It's right up here. This is rated on SOG, shot on goal rating, which gives you an APBA dice roll. If you get an APBA dice roll of that number or less, and that number can inflect based on where you are on the field, and in some cases based on who passed you the ball, as to whether or not they put the shot on goal. Now, a shot on goal in soccer is the same thing as it is on ice hockey, for those who don't know. Okay? If nobody got in the way of it, would it have gone in? Okay? If the answer to that is yes, then one rolls the dice again. But now we roll the dice for the goalkeeper. He's got a very different card. His result numbers only come up when there's been a shot on goal. The results 1 through 10. 1 through 9 are various portions of he saved it. 10 means he didn't. And somebody's yelling goal. Okay? Reasonably simple thing. I want to back up. Yeah.
Is this guy considered a good goalie? He's got a lot of tens up there. I would not.
The hands, okay. He's not great. He's young and he's going to be better. He's Manchester United's goalie, but he's not the best goalkeeper.
I'm not going to that position. I was just curious.
He's got 9. If a shot's on goal, he's got a 1 in 4 chance. That's 9 out of 36 of putting it in. That's not a terrible ratio.
No.
What you have to realize, the vast majority of soccer shots aren't on goal. Okay? The game I just played against Pat, and this is perfectly realistic, I didn't put a shot on goal. Okay? Soccer games, routinely, teams have no shots on goal, 2 shots on goal, 4 shots on goal. It's not unusual. Okay?
Do they track that sort of a save percentage?
Yes. Oh yeah. This is based. Most of this stuff is based on stats that you can get, at least for the bigger leagues. Okay. All right. Now, wanted to backtrack here for a second. Van Persie. You notice all the low numbers on that card. Van Persie, some of you may know, is one of the world's premier strikers. Dutch national team, Manchester United. Also a Man United player is Rio Ferdinand. You notice those are a lot higher numbers. Rio Ferdinand is a great, great player. But he's a defender. He's a central defender. He's one of those guys whose job it is to stand in front of the goalie and make it so the goalie doesn't have to make a save in the first place. Okay? And you notice that he doesn't have a lot of single-digit numbers on there. He doesn't get a lot of shots. All right? But he nonetheless, that's not a bad card, because what he also doesn't have a lot of is numbers 42 through 48, all of which tend to be turnovers, or are turnovers, of one description or another. Okay. Known or suspected substantive issues with the game. I'm not being critical of the game company. I beta tested this darn thing. And the one thing I'm about to tell you is something that when I beta tested it, just didn't get onto my radar and didn't get fixed. It's mercifully an easy fix. The game as it exists, not the game engine, but the player cards, will generate too many straight red cards. For those of you who don't know, a straight red card is a U out of the game. Ejection. Okay? And in soccer, when you're ejected, they don't get to sub for you. You play a man short. How long? Until the game's over. And by the way, the player that got ejected, even though the team gets back to full strength next game, but the player that got ejected does not get to dress. Automatic 1-game suspension can be more. Now, every card has a red card rating. It's the one I'm pointing out on the Hayes card right here. Okay? It can be anything from 11 on up, but I've never seen it be higher than 13 or 14. but everybody's got at least an 11 rating. You roll for whether or not there's going to be a card every time that somebody commits a foul. Well, if everybody's got a rating of at least 11. What does that mean? That means that at least 1 out of every 36 fouls on average is going to produce a straight red card. An average pro soccer game generates about 24 fouls a game. About a dozen for each team is pretty good average. That means that barring anything else, you're going to have 2 straight red cards out of every 3 games you play. No way. Not if you're playing the prison league. Not going to happen. Now, Jerry, you pointed out to me earlier that there is an optional process in the game whereby if you get assessed a red card, you can use what's called clutch points that your team gets to essentially undo the red card. But that works A, if you have enough clutch points, and B, if you haven't used them for something else, and C, if you're using that optional system. The game Rebecca and I played this morning,
We had 3. We rolled
there were 3 red cards that we rolled, and at most one of them could have been turned to yellow with clutch points. The other 2 would have stood, if we were even using the clutch point system, because the teams didn't come into the game with enough clutch points. This screams out for innovation. Luckily, it's an easy innovation. The easy innovation is when somebody's red card rating is 11. Once again, they might have gotten a red card during the year and they might not have. Everybody gets the minimum rating. When somebody with an 11 red card rating hits an 11, I re-roll 1 die, and unless it's a 1, that's a yellow card, not a red. How did they get to this? Again, they gave everybody a minimum rating of 11. It's too much. Some people have ratings, I've seen as high as 13 or 14. That's 1 out of every 9 fouls. If you got a straight red card 1 out of every 9 fouls, you'd be barred from the game before halfway through the first season. I think the other thing that they did statistically is that they counted, when figuring these ratings, they counted all red cards into that rating. Including red cards you get, one of the ways you get a red card is just to get 2 yellow cards. A yellow card is caution. It's very much like basketball. You get a technical foul, you're not necessarily ejected, but if you get 2, you're gone. You get a yellow card, you're not ejected, but if you get 2 in one game, 2 yellows equals red. And I think when they went to the stats, I don't think they factored out the red cards that are 2 yellows equals red, and that's well more than half the red cards in professional soccer. Well more. Okay, so the other thing that I do, if somebody's got a rating that's higher than 11, I knock 1 off of it and make that a yellow. The next rating after that, by the way, is a yellow card rating. If you don't make the red card rating, for De Gea, if you were playing the game out of the box, if you didn't roll an 11, he doesn't get a red card, but if you rolled a 12, he'd get a yellow card. Anything from 13 to 66, yeah, he committed a foul, but there's no card. Okay? Other problems. The game does not produce enough offside calls, statistically. Now, the question is, who cares? It is something that's tracked statistically, but I mean, putouts are tracked statistically in baseball too, and I don't know what anybody ever does with those stats. Okay? I had thought at one point that the corner kick frequency was light, but I'm coming to the conclusion that it's not. I'm coming to the conclusion that enough corner kicks. Corner kick is the restart that an offensive team gets when a defensive team, in order to stop an attack, kicks the ball over the goal line but not into the goal. It's essentially out of bounds on the end line if you're using the basketball. That is, and that, you know, anyway. There is a default on target frequency of penalty kicks. We're putting a penalty kick on target of 2 out of 3. I swear to God, I think that's light. I need to do some more research on it.
There aren't enough throws. It doesn't generate enough throws.
But that doesn't matter. That's not even statistically.
Again, nobody keeps any stats.
No, that's not even statistically kept. Okay? Now, the company had some growing pains putting this game out. What I'm happy to say is that just in the 2 years it's been out, I've seen some of those growing pains get dealt with. The early cards, okay. Baseball, American football, one problem you really don't have much of is trying to figure out what somebody's name is to put it on the card. 99% of the players are American, and we know how Americans configure names. Two problems. And they were doing it the exact same way early on. Here's the problem. Korean players, and there's a few of them, surname first, just like the Chinese. There aren't a lot of Chinese players, there's a lot of Korean players. Secondarily, virtually all Portuguese, virtually all Brazilian, and a fair number of Spanish players play under a single name. And particularly in the case of the Brazilians, that single name may or may not have anything to do with their legal name. If I gave you an APBA Soccer card for somebody named Edson Arantes, would you know who that was?
Yes.
You would, because you lived with me for 17 years.
And this is Volkes.
Edson Arantes?
Take a shot.
No. But if I tell you the name that he played under, you know it. All of you know it. Better known as Pele. Okay?
Gotcha.
Now,
You give us a baseball player.
the thing that I'm glad to see now in the third year of them putting out cards is that they're getting this straightened out. For the most part, not every time, but for the most part, the name that's in caps on the cards is what he plays under, regardless if that's his first name, his last name, his middle name, or something he pulled out of some bodily orifice. And they are sorting that out. They do still
How are they sorting that out? Did they hire some sort of an expert?
They probably just got somebody to look at the names who's like me and actually follows soccer. It's not that tough.
Okay.
Okay? It's not that tough. Or they go on the websites of the teams and see how they're listed. Or they go on Wikipedia and look at the team roster.
These are the game designers are doing these cards?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But clearly, the game designers very clearly knew something about the game of soccer. But they very clearly weren't people who live and breathe the game and know, if they get a set of the 16 Champions League teams, know who 80% of those players are on site, the way a real fan, with the way I do. Okay?
How many leagues are they doing? They're doing like 3 or 4 different leagues, right?
They were originally doing a whole bunch, but they seem to have cut down now. I think that going forward, what we're going to see is MLS, which not for its high quality, but because it's the American League. You get the English Premier, Spanish La Liga, which is their Division I. You're going to get the 16 teams that make the knockout round of the UEFA Champions League, the European Champions League. And they seem to be doing, they did all 32 teams for the 2010 World Cup, all 16 teams for the 2011 Women's World Cup. Here's your trivia question for the day. They did the 2011 Women's World Cup. Who thinks that's the first time APBA ever carded female athletes? Anybody? Who thinks it's not?
I think it's not.
No.
Why not?
Horses.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you. I know we can get past this crowd.
By the way, that's not your first trivia question of the day, let's be clear. 6.
All right. They still have, but there's still some things in the instruction booklet. On this, you can't see it on the screen. They're referring to the people who play between the midfielders and the goalkeeper as defensemen. Defensemen. That's an ice hockey fan talking. There are defenders in soccer. I've never seen a defenseman, not in 40-some years. Okay? The biggest one right now, this is purely cosmetic, I'm not meaning to be critical, but it's just pointing out that they're evolving, is their reference to, I'll find it if I've got it here. There it is. There's a table here, middle right-hand side, called goalkeeper throw-in. Those of you who know the game of soccer, have you the slightest idea what they think they're talking about? What they're talking about is the goalkeeper who's caught the ball but is still live and is going to distribute it either by a throw or a punt. Or sometimes by throwing it on the ground and kicking it. But somebody, once again, whoever designed the game, the chart works fine, it's just a cosmetic issue. But whoever designed the game, quite obviously, is used to watching a youth team where the goalkeepers don't have a great big foot and throw the ball out every time. Whereas in pro soccer, you're going to see that maybe a third of the time. And it wouldn't be a throw in anyway because you're not out of bounds when you take it. But little things like this. That having been said, what I will tell you is this. From the time I first beta tested it, and even more so as the game as they've fixed some of the glitches and came out with the final version, fixed some of the glitches. You all, those of you who know me, know that I'm as big a soccer fan as probably any of you know. I like this game. It's not just that I think it's tolerable and okay to market and all the rest of that. I like it. I look forward to playing it. When the new Champions League card set came in, I've been working on it, ever since. It's a good game if you like soccer. I'm not here to proselytize. This is primarily an APBA football gathering, And those of you who don't like soccer probably won't like this game. If you like soccer at all, or if perhaps you want to learn a little more about it, not a bad way to do it. Lord knows 90% of what I know about baseball history I learned because I'm an APBA fan. And you can certainly learn some things from this. It's a good game. It plays well. I can play it. I've gotten to the point where I can play it solo in about an hour and a quarter, which is not bad. It's certainly a little less time than a real soccer game takes. So anyway, Bob.
What are the major decisions that you make to affect the outcome of the game?
Your formation.
In soccer, the same ones that a soccer coach makes, which quite frankly ain't much. It's a joke in soccer circles that once he's picked the starting 11, the coach might as well not show up. That's not entirely true, but it's close. Okay? You pick your starting 11. How many of them are good offensive players? How many are good defensive players? You pick the formation they're going to play in, and then you can change that during the game. You pick your substitutes, but you pick the 7 substitutes that are going to be available. In soccer, no matter how many people you have on your roster, you may dress exactly, generally in professional club soccer, there are other rules for the World Cup and whatnot, you may have exactly 18 people in uniform and no more. And you're going to start 11. You've got 7 dressed substitutes. And who those 7 are has to be decided before the game. And the other guys have to be in street clothes up in the stands. You decide when to put in those substitutes. It is like baseball, not free substitution. But unlike baseball, you get to replace exactly 3 people per game, max. Of those 7 substitutes, 4 of them are not going to play, although you don't have to know which 4 ahead of time. It's not like the American football game, a game where the coach can influence it play by play. But soccer is not like American football. The coach cannot influence the game play by play. I mean, they can stand on the sidelines and stand on and scream and foam at the mouth and stand on their head and spit wooden nickels, and they do. But the players, for the most part, A, can't hear them, B, if they can, they ignore them.
How often do you change your formation with a game, or do you not?
Generally, formation changes during a game, and this mirrors real soccer when I do it, when there's a score. Okay? If you are in a game that you really need to win and you go down 1-0, I'm going to very likely at some point, maybe not immediately, but certainly if it stays that way into the second half, not only going to pull a couple of forwards off the bench to sub in for more defensive players, but I'm going to change the formation to a 4-3-3 from whatever I was playing.